It's a craft that's, well, as old as humanity itself, and yet somehow it is absolutely taking the contemporary art world by storm. Today, we're going to unravel the incredible story of weaving's big comeback. So, you gotta ask, right? How did something so ancient, so fundamental to our survival, become one of the hottest mediums you can see in galleries and museums right now? What happened? What changed to bring weaving back into the spotlight? The title of our source material, Artefact, kind of gives us a clue. It comes from the Latin for an object made by skill. But there's another meaning, right? A sense of ambiguity, of something that might not be quite what it seems. And for centuries, that's exactly where weaving has lived, in this weird limbo, caught between being a tool for survival and being a true work of art. And this right here, this is the whole conflict in a nutshell. I mean, look at this. In the ancient world, weaving was essential, it was mythical, it was powerful. But then, in the more recent past, its status just plummeted. It was demoted to craft, seen as just domestic women's work, and totally dismissed as a minor art. This huge, dramatic shift is exactly what we're here to understand. Okay, so to really get its comeback, we have to go way, way back. We need to untangle the deep, complex, and honestly fascinating history of weaving, a history that's as old as we are. I mean, you have to imagine it. For early humans, fiber and fabric, that was everything. It was shelter from the cold, it was protection, it was how we formed our earliest identities. It's this primal part of our collective story, literally woven into the fabric of who we are. And this timeline, wow, it is just staggering to look at. We're talking 30,000 years ago, when our ancestors first figured out how to twist plant fibers to make string. That simple, revolutionary act set everything in motion. By 4400 BCE, you've got looms in ancient Egypt, and from there, the technology just spreads like wildfire, evolving all across the globe. And this is where it gets really cool. It wasn't just practical, it was deeply symbolic. Across cultures that never even met, weaving was tied to the biggest ideas we have: life, death, fate, destiny. You've got Penelope in Greece using her loom to control her own fate. You've got Nordic gods literally weaving the threads of life itself. And in Ovid's Metamorphoses, Philomena, silenced by violence, wove her story into a tapestry to expose her attacker. Weaving was a voice for the voiceless. That's powerful. But then something changes. Weaving's sacred and powerful status just starts to unravel. This next part of the story is about its dramatic fall from grace in the Western world, a fall that would take centuries to reverse. So what went wrong? Well, it starts during the Renaissance. Suddenly, there's this new hierarchy of the arts. Painting and sculpture, oh, that was the work of the genius mind. But weaving, that was a mechanical art. The work of skilled hands, but not really of the intellect. By the 18th century, that divide was basically set in stone. Fiber was officially a lesser medium. And if you need proof of how deep this bias went, just listen to this quote from the massively influential philosopher Immanuel Kant. He defined craft not as creative expression, but as an occupation that is disagreeable, burthensome. Ouch. That's a toxic idea, and it infected Western thought for centuries. And let's be real, a huge part of this was about gender. Because weaving was historically associated with women, it was systematically devalued. The careful, detailed work it requires was dismissed as trivial. Our source calls it the gendering of detail, where that painstaking skill was reframed as just fussy and domestic, not intellectually rigorous. Weaving's demotion was tied directly to its association with the feminine. Okay, so that's the fall, but every story of a fall has a story of rebellion, right? And for weaving, that rebellion started in one of the most revolutionary art schools of the 20th century, the Bauhaus. And that rebellion really kicks off here, in 1922, with a total visionary, an artist named Annie Albers. When she got to the Bauhaus, she didn't see the weaving workshop as a place for women's work. No, she saw it as a laboratory for innovation. Albers treated thread like an architectural material and weaving as a rigorous, intellectual practice. She completely shattered that old art versus craft divide and laid the groundwork for weaving to be taken seriously as a modern art form. So Annie Albers lit the spark, but in the 1970s, that spark became an absolute wildfire. This was the moment when weavers went from being artisans to being activists. You have to remember what was happening in the 60s and 70s, all this social and political upheaval. And artists decided, nope, we're not just going to sit here and be dismissed. They consciously formed the fiber art movement as a direct challenge to the art world establishment that had ignored them for so long. And at the very heart of this were these incredible feminist artists, like Judy Chicago and Miriam Shapiro. They looked at these so-called domestic techniques, sewing, weaving, embroidery, and they said, this is our power. They reclaimed them, transforming them into powerful, unapologetic artistic and political statements. It was their way of saying, our work, our history, and our lives matter. And you know what? It started working. They started to break through. A huge turning point was in 1969 when the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the absolute pinnacle of the art establishment, put on a major exhibition called Wall Hangings. For the first time, fiber art was getting serious institutional recognition. The walls were finally, slowly starting to come down. And all of that whole fight brings us right here, to today. After decades of fighting for recognition, weaving isn't just accepted anymore. It's being celebrated. Honestly, this isn't just a comeback. It's a coronation. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at this headline from the New York Times just last year. The moment has arrived. The art world has finally caught up to what artists have known for decades. Fiber is a powerful, prestigious, and profound medium. But here's the really cool part. Today's artists aren't just looking back. They are pushing this medium into totally new places. They're using weaving to explore everything from the binary code of our digital world to the complex mathematics of the universe, from deeply personal stories of identity to the ancient myths that still resonate with us today. Just look at the incredible diversity here. You have artists like Sarah Elgren, who sees weaving as a form of mathematical thinking. Then there's someone like Marcos Q, who's combining traditional techniques with digital looms to explore cultural exchange in our crazy globalized world. And Linnea Schoberg is literally creating a modern weaver's myth, using her loom to tell epic stories for the 21st century. The possibilities are just endless. So that brings us to our final thought. The whole story of weaving, it's a powerful reminder that our definitions of art are not set in stone. They're constructed, which means they can be deconstructed. As we finally celebrate weaving for its complexity and its beauty, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other skills, what other mediums that have been dismissed for so long as just craft are out there waiting for their moment in the sun?